I studied a little bit of photography in college. There's an opening at my agency in Boston for an assistant project manager and print producer, wrangler, writers, Ella Bean. I was the lead producer on Jack Daniels. They're putting together, budgets that are $5,000 to over $1 million. It comes with a lot of pressure. It led me to meeting a lot of great people in the industry and, realizing that I did want to shoot more.
You recently got some news.
I'm like 18 weeks pregnant.
This has been another topic. Women coming forward saying, I hid my pregnancy, wasn't getting calls when I told people I was having a kid. And what's going through your mind right now?
For Ocean Spray, definitely my biggest scope. I love it because I am drawn to more minimal looks. My first editorial shoot for Runner's World. She's a Paralympian, world champion sprinter. We kind of talked about shots that I wanted the graphic lines. So this is a film photo that ended up working out super well. Actually just won an award.
Welcome back, everyone. We are here with Kersten Vasey, who is a commercial and editorial photographer based in Aspen, Colorado. If you want to hear more about Kersten's creative journey as a photographer, go back to the previous episode where we do a nice long interview and talk about all the lovely parts of being a photographer. So now we get to look at some pictures. So Kersten, if you want to bring that up, let's look at them.
Okay, perfect.
Bigger. I wish it was this big in front of my face.
I'll send you a huge print.
Huge. And I want to be I want the person to be my size so I can see all the cranberries.
Totally. I know, the 100%. I know,
this
totally.
Is a dream. I have always wanted to shoot. I mean, what is it? It's not a field.
It's a bog.
A bog.
Yes, exactly.
Bogs. Okay. A cranberry
You
bog.
can. You can. I mean, there's a lot of, farms that'll let you go and experience bogs. This farm, actually, they open to the public during harvest season, which is usually September, late September, early October, in Wisconsin. So I'll hook you up with the bog info.
I might need to. This is because it's so cool. I mean, just stunning. I love that this is your first image. I've seen this image before, but it just pops me every time. Yeah,
I thought this was a good start because I love it because I am drawn to more minimal looks. It's graphic. It's, shows someone at work, which I love covering. I think, obviously I intentionally cropped out other things that were around, people and, the tower that was around and such, because I just wanted a pure field of cranberries. So, and this one won an award, I think, last year, which I was super excited about. So, yeah, not retouched. It's actually that many cranberries.
So when you say you cropped out, you mean while you were standing there?
Yeah, exactly. Being intentional about what you want to leave in. Just wanted those two things.
Well, it's also amazing. This is in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
It's just so not what I would think of. That should be a photo that Wisconsin Travel and Tourism uses,
Oh, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah. It was for Ocean Spray, which I guess most people would probably realize, but yeah, I was shooting, definitely my biggest scope. It was shooting packaging, their new packaging, and I covered 2 farms in Washington, which was kind of a separate social shoot, but then 8 farms in Wisconsin over 3 days.
8 farms over 3 days.
Yes. So it was very, and it was very run and gun, no light, obviously. I was just had a Digitech / assistant, and the art director, one client, and then the project manager / producer. And we just kind of drove around in a minivan eating cheese curds, and we had 2 days of 3 farms a day. So I think this one might have been midday. And so it's is the light, please give me some sort of haze, anything, because you're this is going to be potentially on the back of an Ocean Spray bottle for years, so that was a lot of pressure, but it was the best shoot ever. And honestly, I love to shoot more documentary style, even if it is commercial work. So I just got up on one of the towers there, the tower that like sucks up the berries basically into the
Right.
truck. I was standing on top of, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I have a couple more that I can show you from that project that I really liked, and I think I
Yeah,
can just
I'd love to hear also just like
yeah.
it sounds like a pretty complex campaign. Like you had multiple shoots, multiple objectives, deliverables, things like that. Like what was that pre-production or not even pre-production, what was that like getting hired process like as far as what did you have to sort of provide from your end to say I'm the photographer for the job and here's the
Right.
budget and all these things?
I mean, honestly, like it was kind of a dream job in that it was like it was it's a small agency outside of I believe they're in Golden, and they had looked at my work for another, like a small shoot that I basically like couldn't do because I was doing a bigger shoot right afterwards. And
Hmm.
then this shoot, they had seen my work already, and so I think that they thought I would be a good fit. And so it's not like I like reached out to them. It's like I want to shoot Ocean Spray. It just like magically appeared in my inbox and was like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, that's a dream. That's a dream job.
Totally.
As far as the production went, I mean, Lucy, who's like the best producer ever, she was so fun to work with and amazing. She was the one dealing with all the farming and the farmer contacts. But I mean, things happen, on our Washington shoot. One of the farms, the day before we were supposed to shoot, the night before, so even like 12 hours prior, they were looking at their cranberries, and they were like, there were like little small snails that had um, basically sprung up on their crop. And so that we couldn't shoot that farm the next
Wow.
morning.
Yeah.
And so then we had to pivot and shoot this other farm. And she was like, oh, so we had scouted, already scouted the spot. And then we basically had to shoot at this other spot, other unknown spot the next morning. And it ended up working out perfectly because the new spot had kind of a background and like trees around the bog, so it
Hmm.
wasn't just like a flat field with like nothing, and just like
Hmm.
because it's nice to have some visual interest there, not when you're shooting like this obviously, but any other angle you're just like I need something to work with here.
Right. This image is
um
great once, and then
yeah,
you can't have it.
exactly.
Then you're done.
Yeah, and like I definitely shot a lot like overhead, but if you're shooting, the next one will be the opposite. So this is
Mm.
a shot, a different farm in Wisconsin, where I was very adamant about bringing an underwater housing, um, just from a different angle, and just because I had never really seen like cranberry fields with,
Hmm.
underwater before. So I kind of wanted to do the split dome, um, shot for, just, and we honestly ended up using it a ton, but I didn't have like one of the parts. So I ended up having to shoot on like, I think I had to shoot on um, shutter priority, and so I didn't have that much control over the camera, which was really like really annoying. But
And it's in the housing. You're just like,
right, exactly, and you're like, well, yeah, and I mean, I guess that's like one of the things I want to talk about with this image is just like pushing yourself a little bit, and just because I had not used housing, it was an Ikelite housing, which I haven't used a big housing before. So, I was testing out prior with like in the tub
mhm.
but, nothing really compares to using it IRL, like on set
Yeah.
when people are like, around, like, do you
Well,
have the shot?
especially when you're like running, I have a tendency to, if it's a paid shoot,
Yeah,
I am very hesitant to like incorporate new styles or
mhm,
experiment. I know I can get some good images, but still you don't know, especially if you don't have the control like with a
right.
underwater housing.
So I shoot R5, and I think this one I did a 15 to 35, and just
Hmm.
assumed that, because that one it fit the kind of best in the setup that I had. I think I kind of assumed that I think this is a 35-ish, or maybe in between, I can't remember, but I kind of like set that how I wanted to ahead of time, and then I mean, they have controls for all of that, but I kind of just wanted to be like set it, forget it situation. Um, yeah, and I think, the light ended up working out. Like we just used like a small bounce basically on him, and that
Hmm.
was it. And like the yellow truck was like in perfect position. I was like,
Yeah, and the
the
color,
primary colors. Yeah,
the
exactly.
color.
Like it, yeah,
Because
it all came
yeah, I
out
mean, the
together.
images, like seeing that other image and you saying it's like midday or it's like kind of bright sunlight, and
Yeah,
then here you see a little of that overcast.
exactly.
It kind of looks like the light that you would see during like smoke season.
Yeah, yeah,
Almost like a warm glow, but bright. So you had an assistant bouncing on the truck side of him, bouncing
yeah,
the light up. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Very
exactly.
cool.
Just like the people I worked with, the farmers were so amazing. And yeah,
Hmm.
I love working with real people.
Yeah.
And then I have one more shot from that shoot was
Oh,
this family farm. Actually, this is the same farm that the first shot was
look
from.
at I mean, look at her shirt and their shirts and the trees.
I
I mean,
didn't, I didn't
look at
style, like,
that.
no one styled them except
Who would do that?
their mom must have been like, this'll look, this'll look good
Yeah.
together.
I mean, it is like fall colors, but wow, that's stunning.
Yeah, it was like not something. So for this image, I just wanted to say that like this was not something that was in the client brief, like this stage of an
Mhm.
image. But for me, like it is nice, and you should always try. Like if you have time, obviously don't be a nuisance, but if it's there to shoot something that you see and just be spontaneous on set,
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, that would be a really cool shot. Because I love the different, horizon layers, obviously, and their colors, and I just love like girls and at this age too.
Yeah.
I have tons of shots of them too, like playing in the water and just like being kind of like funny, and because I love that. But yeah, I just loved the shot in general.
Oh,
Cool.
wow. That's stunning.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
really stunning. Who is this for?
So this was my first editorial shoot for Runner's World.
Okay. Okay.
Um, yeah, and it was a story I pitched to shoot and write in 2020, I think. And her name is Deja Young Craddock. She's a Paralympian, world champion sprinter, and I ended up going down to Austin to
Hmm.
shoot with her. And basically, like the night before, she had like kind of an emergency, and then I had to move location, so I had to find a whole new track to shoot her at, and again, the producer, the producer in me was helpful at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I ended up having to drive like 2 hours to go to a new spot that I miraculously found like closer to her.
So were you
Yeah.
able to scout that location before?
No, no.
No, you just had to find the track and make it
Yeah.
work.
I saw pictures and I was like, talk to the assistant principal who was also in charge of athletics, who was like, I don't think we're doing a soccer game then. Like, you
I don't think
know,
it's a soccer game.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, please don't let there be a soccer game. But anyway,
There might
like,
be a bake sale, but
yeah, exactly. So that was the kind of thing where you're gonna just figure out what you can make work and make it work when you have to. So
so yeah, let me kind of walk me through the process of this shot because I would imagine this isn't and correct me if I'm wrong. I would imagine this is not the first like portrait you took in this spot, or maybe it was. Like, did you see the spot first? I know sometimes with me, I'm like, ooh, there's the light, and I kind of start moving towards it with my camera, and then and whoever,
right.
and then it takes a lot of moving around to be like, ooh,
Yeah,
that's the spot. So I'm curious how
totally.
this came about, especially since you had not scouted the location.
Right. So I ended up shooting a little bit of her. It was like summer in Texas, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like through, I don't know. It wasn't even that. It was like kind of like still too bright out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think because we had to work around her schedule, or because I was just nervous about how long things were going to take. And so we were definitely shooting earlier than we definitely needed to. But anyway, so I ended up shooting her like kind of stretching, getting ready to run on the turf before that. I realized it was just like it was too hot, like light wise and heat wise. So then she was there with her sister. We kind of like ended up just taking a break in the shade. And that's when I just like saw the light coming through. And was just like, oh, this is like way better.
And all the other
So
stuff you set up and like
yeah,
did.
exactly. I mean, I was shooting kind of like her working out and her doing her whole thing. So it wasn't like we had like a set. It was more, I was obviously editorial. So we kind of covered whatever looked good. But because the light looked so awesome on her, we shot there for a little bit. I shot a little bit of film and then I shot some with her sister there, but this was kind of my favorite, I think, that
Yeah.
from that little
There's
spot.
something about the way her hair,
Her hair is
the
so sweet.
frosted tips
Hmm.
sort of match some of the shapes and the color of the
Hmm.
light on her skin, and I think
And of
it's
course,
really cool.
I'm like, I wish I had pulled out,
Yeah.
pulled back a little bit more, like, but I mean, it's what it,
Frame is perfect. I'm like, oh, I would never do that frame, but I love that frame.
yeah, exactly. But she's an awesome person.
Yeah, and the look is.
Mhm.
Were you kind of like, was that something that she did on her own, or did you kind of have to tease that out of her?
I kind of asked her to do that. I mean, we did some smilier ones, and actually, Runner's World ended up using because it was online first, and they decided they wanted to run it in print like months later,
Oh
like when the
wow.
Paralympics actually happened.
Yeah. Okay.
So the one that I chose was she was a little more like she had almost like a smiley look, but
Mm,
to me, like I just liked her a little bit
yeah.
better in in this shot, and that was a great shoot, and that was a good learning lesson for shooting editorial and being like, oh, this is cool. I mean, the budgets obviously aren't as big, but it
Mhm.
was really nice to be able to write. I was looking to hone in my writing skills and shooting skills into one story, so it was like the perfect project basically
Yeah.
to start with. So this is I'll have the next few shots are from and right now unreleased project, but will be released in the next couple weeks. But so I pitched this story to Bicycling Magazine. Eh, let's see, last spring. Um, this is covering RAGBRAI, which is I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the Register's annual Great Bicycle Ride across Iowa.
Oh wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know about it, but it is it's like a hugely popular thing in Iowa and
Okay.
beyond, honestly. Once people do it, they want to come back every year. But it's
Yeah.
basically you ride across the state of Iowa during like one of the hottest weeks of the year, end of July. I had pitched it to them to do like either a photo essay or like last year was the 50th anniversary. It all timed well because I had a family wedding in Iowa like the weekend that it ended. My husband's family has been doing RAGBRAI for years, and then my dad remembers the race, or it's not even a race, it's just a ride going through his college campus in Iowa in the 70s.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so it has like, and the ride
Generation.
itself has a ton of history.
Yeah.
It changes towns like every year is like fun to see which towns it's going through and all the through towns, all the locals, bake pies and it's this huge camp out. There's concerts every night. You don't get any sleep.
Yeah.
You're camping and it's 95 degrees at night. And like, yeah, this just speaks to like
Awful. I'm sorry.
being, yeah, it was, I mean, it's such a hard environment to shoot in. And I was like, I want to shoot it because it's had so many funny people and
Yeah.
it was truly sensory overload.
Hmm.
So this is just like one spot that I chose. You can't drive on course. I biked some on course, and then Matt would occasionally like let me ride, and then he would meet me at different towns. So it was just a mix of like where I could intersect with the route.
Hmm.
This was like just a random spot that I like intersected, like going past the wind turbines, and I kind of wanted to get some motion in there. And yeah, I think I just love like motion blur and graphic shots. So, and then this was a shot from RAGBRAI too of just kind of an interesting angle, I thought, of like a family
Hmm.
that were like waiting to see the riders come through.
And that's another situation where I would imagine you have to really be seeking out the visual interest. No cloud, hot as all get out, and cornfields, flattish
Right.
roads.
Let me give myself the hardest thing ever. I really want to shoot that, but
Well, that was so. Wait, had you been there before? Had you been to the event? No, you hadn't.
no. I
Okay.
hadn't, but I was like, I either want to shoot it or ride it. Bicycling was into it a few months prior, and then, I made it happen. And then I didn't camp every night, but the nights that I camped and then had to shoot afterwards, like I was just, after that, I was so exhausted. Like,
Yeah, that's brutal. That's really brutal.
because after that, it's like every production afterwards, you're like, this is a piece of cake.
There's shade here. I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. It's not 95% humidity. Like, It was like the heat index was 110 on some days.
Oh,
And then this is a shot from
wow.
RAGBRAI too. This
Beautiful.
I have to shout out to my husband because I was shooting on the ground while he was drone opping for me. Because obviously you only have so much nice light in the morning, and we kind of talked about like shots that I wanted to get. Obviously, wanted the graphic lines of the
Yeah.
shadows and the cornfields, and um,
What
yeah, get that
drone
nice
do
morning
you
light.
use to get this type of image?
So this was a Mavic 3 Pro.
Okay. And that has
Um,
Hasselblad or does that have?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yep.
Okay.
And it's another thing, we're rolling with the punches. I had brought my old drone and had not flown it in forever. And it was not like none of the because I hadn't used it in forever. My batteries were dead, like it wasn't working, and I was like, fuck. And so I rented a drone from some just my usual spot that I rent stuff from and then it was shipped into Des Moines. And so I could only really shoot with it one morning. And
Mm,
so it was very much like we need to get these shots. Like, but I'm spending way too much money on this rental and using all of my budget. But I knew I wanted to get overhead shots, and I wish I had gotten more, honestly. I
yeah.
could definitely, you could shoot for hours and hours
Yeah.
like
So
that. I
many
love
rows and lines.
exactly. Like I love graphic stuff like this. So,
That's
and
like a
then
perfect magazine spread.
oh, totally. I know. And then this is a shot at the very end of the ride where everyone
Oh,
like,
that's amazing. I love that.
and a lot of people like just they dip their back tire at the beginning of the race and dip their
Uh-huh.
front tire at the end. So
Okay.
this is in the Mississippi, in Davenport, Iowa. I basically was like, got to the end and just kind of wandered around to see, what was kind of happening. And like,
Hmm.
there's this whole line to get into this one spot where you dip your tire, and it was taking forever to like even just dip your tire. I was like, I'm not going to be able to. This is underwater housing as well, um, but it doesn't look like it, obviously. But and I was like, I need to go somewhere else. So I ended up walking to this bridge and seeing like all these people kind of like jumping into the water. And so I was like, I need to get my housing out right now. Like,
Yeah.
and so this family, I think they told me that they've been doing RAGBRAI for like 25 years. And
Wow.
so these kids, I have a shot of like one of the girls like riding into the water. Um, that I really like. The one that looks like she's drowning actually. But these kids, like, it was, I think, their first full ride, so they rode, with their families for 500 miles or whatever. And yeah, just a fun celebratory moment. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
like get in so I was like completely like in the water in my clothes, like with my housing.
And you got the shot. You got the shot.
Yeah, I think I wish I. Well, I mean, it's funny because like I got so many with some water in there, but it's so murky and disgusting. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
it doesn't really add that much, so it's probably okay that it doesn't have like the water
Yeah.
in there. So
Oh,
this is from a horse packing personal project I did with my husband's cousins and then girlfriend, who's pictured here. They basically had decided to move from northern Wyoming to Paonia, Colorado, southern Colorado. Not super southern Colorado, but anyway, so, and they're, in the ranching, especially Chelsea, her family's like very ranch oriented.
okay.
And they were like, instead of like just normal moving, like, let's just horseback it. And so they decided to like, obviously they didn't take everything on their horses, but they, um, just basically like took a lot of their stuff, and they had 7 horses, 2 dogs. It was 3 people, and I would have loved to do the ride with them, but it wasn't. It was a 45-day horse packing trip,
Yeah, that's a long
and I
time.
didn't know about it until maybe a few weeks prior, and so I didn't really have adequate time to pitch it like properly, but ended up getting some product from like Jetboil, Patagonia
Mhm.
Provisions, and Pendleton whiskey, of course. And I met up with them like 4 or 5 times to shoot there. And again, like the type of shoot that I love, where it's just me covering, and like this is at sunrise, and like I think they're like maybe midway or almost. No, this is when they're almost done actually. And they're just, have their horses who are all like so tired and ready to be done. And I just love this shot because of the different layers and how many horses you can like see, which you don't really notice at first,
Yeah,
and just
exactly.
how
You're like, there's a lot of
uncomfortably,
legs.
Totally, and how uncomfortably close you are to that one horse. I know, and his like small legs over. Yeah, it's just like a funny. I just love how like kind
A
of
lot of
different it looks.
juxtaposition. Yeah, totally.
Exactly, and I think I was against the fence, and I was like, please don't crush me. This is from that trip too, um, where they're scrubbing off the like the horse blankets to kind of get them ready for the morning or
Mhm.
for the ride that day. But yeah, I mean, just finding the good light, and he was already doing it right there, and I was like, oh, well, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Do you remember what lens this was?
I'm assuming this must have been my 28 to 70
Okay.
on the R5. That's like the go-to. Although I do love shooting the 70 to 200 is like
Mm-hmm.
one of my
Nice.
faves. It's funny. I think Ocean Spray they use that shot in one of their their creative decks. So I know they really responded to like the light, the someone
Which,
doing work and
which shot the overhead or with the truck?
oh, I
Or
just mean like the client in general. They had like
oh,
pulled
oh, oh.
work, they had like a mood board of images and
Yeah,
I think they really liked this image.
yeah.
So that's the other thing is, doing personal projects like this. Obviously we did have some support with product, but like you you never know who's going to see it. I mean, people want to see work that you want to shoot. So this was definitely
Right.
one of those that I wanted to shoot. So,
Give me a little context when you say, you had support through product. Just kind of give me some background on what that means exactly.
oh, really? I mean, it was just through connections, I had gotten in touch with actually the guys who were already riding had gotten in touch with Jetboil themselves.
Mm.
And then I had a friend who knew people at Patagonia, and so they wanted to send provision stuff, and basically would just see like we didn't decide on a number of things to shoot. It was very much like here's some product that you guys will hopefully
Mhm.
use, see what you can capture, and then afterwards you'll send a gallery, and we'll see if we want to license anything from you. So they and then Pendleton I think gave us like 8 bottles of whiskey, which honestly like was hilarious because I kind of acted as their a little bit like a sag wagon too because I was meeting up with them, and I think I met up with them when they left, and then again maybe 8 days later, and I think they had already gone through like 2 to 3 bottles of Pendleton. So
I like horse packers and
yeah,
ranchers and skiers probably have about the same
yeah,
bulk and
and
stuff.
they're like we only really ride like however many hours a day, and then we sit at camp. So
Yeah.
it's like
You gotta have something to do.
exactly. So, and really, like, I think I had been in talks with like some of them about licensing, but really no one ever bought any images, but they are some of my favorite shots. So it's not like I regret doing it at all.
And the reason I'm asking, because I just want to like lay that out. I say this sometimes where I'm like, oh yeah, I shoot on spec. But
Yeah.
like, so and this is something that a lot of photographers can do to build portfolios or get those connections is just instead of saying, hey, company, X company, that's going to fit with this trip or this shoot I have planned. If you want to send some product, I can get some images. And then it's kind of like with the hopes that those companies might license them later or hire you for something else
Yeah.
and use in your own portfolio to get you other jobs. So
Yeah.
it's a good way to build. It can be a great way to like build a portfolio of images that are shot for a brand. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I know for me coming from the editorial world, you're like, oh, you can do that. And like for you as from the advertising world, you're probably like, no, duh. Like this is an obvious path to getting this done.
Yeah. Well, it's not something that I really dealt with when I was a producer. Like I
Mhm.
became more familiar with it when I was a photographer because it is like, you have to upfront the costs. Like it's
Right.
not super ideal.
Hmm.
Um, but it depends on how much effort you want to put in with the risk of not getting anything out of it. So,
Right.
or like anything financial out of it, I guess.
Hmm.
But I do know some brands like almost only work on spec because they can or,
Right.
um, but, but yeah, it is freeing though at the same time because you're like, I'm going to shoot it, obviously you'll have something in mind, like
Hmm.
maybe they want a shot like this, but you can kind of shoot it if you're not really expecting much, kind of shoot it how you want and on
Right.
your own time and whatever.
No
So
pressure.
yeah, exactly. So and Yeah, and I do really like. I have done a couple. I haven't done that many in that way, but it is a
Hmm.
nice way to build your portfolio for sure. And then the shot is just at one of their campgrounds, I think in southern Wyoming. Yeah, and I ended up shooting it. I shot it normal way, but a right side up, and then flipped it in post. So sometimes, like I will, crop things in post, or just figure out if they maybe look a little bit better tweaked in a way. So I don't
Okay.
think that's, I think a lot of people do that. I think sometimes you have to like almost find the good image within the shot almost, and because our
Yeah.
cameras are so capable these days with 40 to 100 megapixels, it's like it's totally doable, and
Yeah.
I love doing that. So
I find like I wonder for you, like I find that as much as I try and crop images in post to kind of like find an image, it 9.5 times out of 10 is like crappy compared to what I shoot from my camera. Like, and I'm not talking about every frame from a camera. I'm talking about like minimal cropping. Like, okay, there's too much negative space or there's like a weird building here or whatever.
right.
And just crop in a little. Not like I'm seeking out a whole new frame in in post. So for something like this, did you see this image upside down when you shot it? Or I know you said you shot it right side up, but
Right.
was like the final, was this in your head or did you see this while you were in post?
I
Or
actually saw that when I was in post, because I shot it, and then I was like, I don't think it's that strong, and then I realized that, just like I think with the line, how your eye naturally travels, I think it works better coming from the top left
yeah,
into the scene, and I think that made it that much a stronger of an image. And I think, and I don't know, I like seeing reflections flipped
yeah.
around too, because I think then it just makes the viewer think a little bit
It's
more
so
about
much
it.
more intentional. It is
Yeah.
like that's
Right.
intentional, and it makes me realize that the person who created it was being intentional, and so it makes me want to be intentional with the way I view it.
Yeah. Totally.
Uh, so from your perspective as like your experience from this, campaign advertising side, when you're shooting like this, where is that like is this really like, oh, I'm so inspired in the moment and this is the frame, or do you have sort of like this idea of, oh, I could see this being used as packaging or a social post or whatever, like where's your brain when you're actually shooting these images?
When I'm shooting, it's pure like, oh, that looks cool.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. I thought maybe you
No,
had
totally. I mean, especially with something like this, it's like,
yeah.
oh, that's beautiful, or that, you know, like obviously it's different when I'm on a commercial shoot and I'm like, oh, that could be the hero portrait that I need to get at, you know, 16 by 9, or whatever. Like, but if in general, like, I'm usually just, and especially this like more documentary style. Not all shoots are like this, obviously.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm just looking at it from a pure, like visually appealing standpoint, where I
Right.
just think something looks really cool, and I think it did.
Oh no, it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah,
It's really
cool.
exciting.
This is a shot of my friend Cheyenne Orvis, who is a local fly fishing guide in the Roaring Fork where I live. And I started working with her a little bit for her. Just, she has like sponsors she needs content for, and so we started
Mhm.
shooting a lot together. Like when I moved, like honestly, right when I moved to the Valley in 2022. Um, and I had never really, like, I'm not a fly fishing person myself,
Mhm.
but hopefully I will. I'm supposed to get a lesson from her, but anyway, I just love this image just because I am a big fan of foreground interest, and I love the color, like the yellow shooting through, shooting through something that is going to give that like layered effect.
Mhm.
At an angle, I changed the angle so that the framing kind of worked better.
Mhm.
I do love shooting at that angle. You don't always have to follow the horizon line, so I just thought that like looked cooler that way.
So coming from like my photojournalism background, it's very much like you get the shot however you have to get the shot, but the horizon line is like needs to be pretty close to horizontal. And so that, like, I know for me now trying to do more commercial work, that's like this it's like this rule in my
Is
head.
it hard for you? Yeah.
Break. Yeah. And
Really?
I have to like in motion blur, you know, I'm really pushing myself to like really, because motion, it's so cool. Like a lot of the images that strike me have some interesting use of motion blur, you know, and so yeah, just really having to like push myself creatively with photography, and just remembering that there are no rules, and
Yeah.
sort of breaking these you know, and I was an editor in a magazine for 7 or 8 years. Yeah, and I was like
Yeah.
the photo editor, and so it was very much about like if you had the angle on a photo wrong, like you can tell like you can switch your camera just a little bit and make something look a lot steeper. And
Right. Right.
oh, and you know that
Classic move.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like you know, so it's yeah, it's just a weird thing in my head that I see this. I'm like, oh, duh, like this looks so good that way. But if I were out there, I probably wouldn't even see it because I'm so hooked on the.
Totally. I used to mentally be like that as well. It needs to be so perfect, perfectly straight, or it needs to be very skew, right? Like
Right.
there's a weird in between where
No,
it looks like a mistake, right? So it
yes.
needs to feel intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the intention thing again. So yeah, but I think it is freeing to like kind of like, oh yeah, like that does make sense. Like you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need for it to be straight to make sense. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also a good reminder though that there has to be intentionality behind it for it to really work.
Yeah,
You know, like just
exactly.
taking a nice frame and then, you know, going like this a little bit is not going to like make it better.
Yeah, exactly. But that's another thing I do in post though too is like if it's not quite there, like hopefully I've shot wide enough so that I can do
Yeah.
that, but like just make it a little bit more aggressive or I'm like, never mind, this needs to be straight straight horizon line.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of motion blur.
Oh, yeah.
Um yeah, so this was from actually a spec shoot that I did just locally in Carbondale for this bikini line, Frankie's Bikinis, and I knew I wanted to do a shoot with horses, and Errol, who's on the horse, is a rancher and model, so that worked out well. And then
Right.
Allie, who's running, is also a local model, but usually is in New York. But anyway, I really wanted to do more like fashion, but bring it kind of into my realm,
Hmm.
um, and just make cool work together. You know, it was a good test shoot to work with new models, and then kind of put together my own vision, and then I worked with this couple of girls that do a lot of productions in the valley, Erin and Ruthie, and they helped me style it. And this is at Ruthie's like family's ranch outside of Carbondale. I really love the light, the movement. I'm drawn to horses for sure. I think a lot of us are. I grew up like my family had a ranch in Kansas, and then I had in North Carolina, had horses like around a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. So for something like this, did you have any supplemental lighting or is it just natural light?
it's just natural light. It was like the last sun of the evening, and yeah, we had to work quickly. She was like, Allie was like, "Oh, I have a flight that I need to catch," and I was like, "What?"
Oh,
I was like, "Wait, what? It's sunset." You know, with motion blur, it's like it's one of those things where you get so many. For me, not maybe not everyone, but I feel like you get a lot of, and you get better the more you shoot it, but you get a lot of shitty shots, and then you're like, okay, that one, is sharp enough, so you see their forms, but then it
yeah.
has
It has the right amount of blur.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly, yeah.
So, um, walk me through just quickly the process of this. You said this is a test photo shoot
Hmm.
for a bikini line.
Yeah,
And so was it called Frankie's? Is that what you said?
yeah, yeah,
So Frankie's is the client,
yeah.
and walk me through the process of, okay, I want to do this test shoot. I want to the idea and kind of how you put the
Hmm.
piece together to then come out with like an image like this.
Yeah, so I So Frankie's actually, my sister-in-law is the head merchant there,
Okay.
and I had wanted to do kind of like a shoot for them, or for, again, to like work on kind of my more fashion portfolio. And so basically what I did was, I want to be transparent. I did have like a connection there. Obviously it doesn't always work out like that, but I put together a like one sheeter for her, two sheeter that had like a few mood board images, like these are the goals of the shoot, sent that to them, to her, and she passed it along to her team. That was basically like, I'm open to shooting, whatever product you kind of want to, during this time frame that you're trying to push, or
Hmm.
whatever. These just happen to be, they have dresses that they sell. It could be evergreen content, meaning like it can work at any point. Basically, from there, they were into it, but said, again, we don't know if we're going to license any of these images, but we'll send you a bunch of product. They sent the product, and I kind of put a bunch of like scenarios together by the product they sent. And so this was the end look, but then we had, a ton of other looks that we shot. But it was definitely like my favorite, I think, kind of scene of the day was with the horses and with the running and stuff. But we shot like one of the girls in like, because I was like, how do we connect like bikinis?
Yeah.
It was kind of a funny thing. You should look at this guy, look at this gallery afterwards. But we had one of the gals bathing in like the cattle, like the tub. So it was like
Hmm.
freezing cold water in a bikini. And because it's like you can see there's snow on the mountain in the background. So it was like, I think it was early October. So it was cold.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially in
Luckily
the
it
morning
wasn't,
at night. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it wasn't super ideal, but I do like that we got some snow in the mountains, and,
Yeah, that
we
adds
just did it.
a lot. Like that's a night. That was kind of one of the first things I was drawn to was the
Yeah,
snow in the background.
totally. And, we did another scene, like I was playing off like the whole spaghetti Western thing where, I don't know if do you know spaghetti Westerns, like how,
Mhm.
yeah. So we
Yeah.
did like a spaghetti scene with one of them in a like Pamela Anderson's red bikini, red bathing suit. It was just like I wanted to have fun, and I think we did, so it was successful.
So it was a 1 day shoot
Yeah, it
and
was like from
like
2 p.m. to 7 p.m. or something.
okay, and a location that was you had a connection. So
Yeah.
and you had the two models
Yeah.
and two producers or
Well, they kind of work together. One does more of the styling and one does more of the creative slash production. It kind of depends on the project. Yeah. And I had really like put together like the production in a way ahead of time, but they kind of like helped me hone things together and like style, that kind of thing.
and
Yeah.
so was that a did you pay them or did you guys have like a trade sort of we'll all
Oh
use
yeah.
this?
So the producer and styling I did not end up paying, because they just wanted to do it kind of as well for their
Right.
books. Models I did end up paying. I ended up having an assistant as well who I paid. I think that's an important thing to note is, if it's not conducive to someone, I think it is tough. I was hoping that, model wise I would be able to do a trade, but they're
Mhm.
both wrapped. So
Yeah.
it kind of depends on the level of model you're working with and like whether it's good for them. So I did end up spending some money on the shoot, and, if I have an assistant, I'm not going to expect them to just want to do it for free. Like I want to pay someone what they're worth, and
Mhm.
that's important to me. And it was a girl that actually drove in from Denver, who I'd wanted to, and it's a good way to test out working together too. So that was important to me. So that's a good question.
Yeah. Well, I just think like I just went through some test shoots and was working with more like influencer level, not, paid repped models. And I was, both of them were like, well, I don't really need to get paid. And I'm like, no, I'm going to pay you for your
Yeah.
time. And we shot at one of their houses. And so I was like, I don't, I'm gonna pay you like a location fee. And
Right.
cause she's cleaned it. She put a lot of time in and,
Right.
um, but yeah, I think that's a good point where it's like you can, do it for free if it's benefiting. Do it for free if it's an even trade and those people feel like
Exactly.
getting something out of it. But if they're not and it's their career or not, you got to pay people for their time.
Exactly. Yeah. And because we all have been asked to do stuff because it's for exposure, if it's for product, and you're like, I don't, I don't need that. Like,
So,
I can't
we're
eat the exposure.
yeah, exposure is delicious.
Yeah,
I'm allergic
exactly.
to it though, so I can't have it.
So this was in Chamonix,
Mm.
and we had like such. I was there for fun to visit. My sister actually lives in Switzerland, and was there for fun to ski during spring break last year, and we had had like such horrendous like socked in weather, classic. And this was like one afternoon where I was kind of wandering around with my camera, and just because I had seen that the light was, the clouds were about to break, so I just walked around town with my camera, and then this was just shot from town.
Wow.
Um, and again, like in post, I just obviously love the, because it's kind of ombre goes from dark to light. Thought it was
Mhm.
much more graphic if I flipped it upside down. Um, and so, yeah, that was all just, Photoshop. I just flipped it one time, and then I just thought it was kind of a more powerful image. It still works the other way, but I thought it was a cool way to see a landscape, I guess. And people, yeah, some people were like, what lake is that? Like, what? I'm like, it's not a lake. um,
Yeah, I mean it's so wild.
yeah.
Wow. Very
And I was
cool.
also kind of shooting for so one client I do work for is Outer Range Brewing, and they
Mm.
had opened a new brewery they're Colorado based, but they had opened a new brewery outside of Chamonix, and they
Mm.
were looking for kind of landscapes and lifestyle shots from, France and Switzerland too.
Mhm.
So, um, I let them use this, and it was like, it was one of those like, just get whatever you can kind of thing. But I ended up giving them a ton of like landscapes and scenery shots too. So and then this won an award from I can't remember, APA or something,
Oh,
but yeah,
very cool.
I do really love it. I mean, this one's for Outer Range too.
Yeah.
This actually just won an award for, which was super unexpected. Um, this was like at the end of a shoot, and
Mhm.
we were shooting like a lifestyle scenario by in Colorado by a mountain and like kind of like ski scene, and we were having beers and everything, and we're kind of like packing up for the night, and that's my husband just like smashed. I was like, oh, can you, like, I'll get a picture of it. So this is a film photo that ended up like working out super
Oh
well
wow.
with. I was like, thank God I was in focus, because sometimes because it was like fully autofocus, like it's a medium format, like basically point and shoot, and it
Mm.
worked out very well. It was obviously covered in beer slush afterwards, um, but yeah, I do really like that shot too, and just how much like movement and light is in it, and you can still see the logo, which was pretty awesome. This was a good like personal thing that I wanted to shoot with my friend Sarah. We had reconnected after, like, we worked together in Boston at my first agency, and then hadn't talked for like a decade, and then we reconnected and like wanted to do like a cool outdoor thing together, and we ended up doing like 100 miles on the Arizona Trail. um, and this morning, um, I basically, this was like at the start of the Grand Canyon. I think the night before we were going in from the north side, and she just like happened to get a bloody nose, and I was like, can I take your portrait? And so that's another thing, is like, I just love, you just need to be like thinking about, moments where that could look cool. And I love the contrast of the red and green.
Mhm.
Um, and I ended up doing a photo essay in a write up for Field Mag with all the 35 millimeter shots that I took during the trip,
Oh wow.
because I
Okay.
just had like I just had that one camera on me, and it was so freeing to be able to just shoot film and not worry about like retaking things, and it
Mhm.
was so fun to see the photos come in afterwards.
I feel like the portraits are always such a night can be like a nice unexpected touch of
Yeah.
never, I won't say never, but like it's hard to anticipate and plan for these types of images because they're powerful because they're so loose and in the moment and
Right.
it's like just yeah don't forget to like be looking for that stuff and be aware that that's going to be happening and use whatever camera you got.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think, yeah, that's a good lesson to end on, is just to always be thinking, just always be paying attention, I guess, because you do miss things. And I think that just doing more editorial and stuff like in events, and you just always need to be kind of looking around and
Totally.
kind of seeing what might translate well into a photograph and anticipating what could happen. Also, setting yourself up for those moments is really important. Yeah, and not having such a like set shot list, being open to seeing things outside of the ordinary or what you might have planned on.
Where do you see yourself kind of going? I know you said it sounds like you're incorporating more fashion. Do you have like anything you're really psyched to shoot in the near future?
I'm wrapping up a bunch of stuff right now, but I don't have, speaking of our specialist versus generalist thing, I've wanted to shoot more fashion, but I also, really love shooting sports and agriculture. So I do see myself still kind of doing a lot. I know a lot of people are talking about niching down and, that it's better for your career. And, I don't want to do that yet. I think I still have so many things that I liked to shoot. It's like, I like to bring my eye to different experiences and clients. I could see myself doing a lot of different things, to be honest. I would like to get into directing. Again, like I do think it's important to be in the video realm. I don't know if I'll pick up, actually like cam mopping, but
right.
I would love to be able to direct something, and it's just another good tool to add to the toolbox for sure.
Yeah, sounds like we're going to see some really exciting things from you in the near future.
I hope so.
But thanks so much for taking the time, Kersten, and I will be cheering you on every step of the way.
Right back at you. Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk soon.